Today we move to the most relevant, we can say, the end point of literary history, that we begin with medieval age and we have reached, that is called postmodern age or post World War period, or the time of contemporary literature. Post World War literature, that is historically called postmodern age, and theoretically it is thought the reflection of a theory that is called postmodernism. जैसा हमने देखा था कि मॉडर्न एज में मॉडर्निज्म या मॉडर्निस्ट थ्योरी की बहुत बात की गई थी, और मैंने बताया कि मॉडर्निज्म एक सेट ऑफ थ्योरीज है जिसमें अवांगार्ड, इमेजिज्म, इंप्रेशनिज्म, सिंबलिज्म, सररियलिज्म, डाडाइज्म, वेरोटिसिज्म, मैजिकल रियलिज्म, ये सिग्निफिकेंट मूवमेंट है जिनमें से ज्यादातर का ताल्लुक आर्ट या पेंटिंग से है, और उन्होंने लिटरेरी फॉर्म्स को इन्फ्लुएंस किया है। दूसरा, मॉडर्निज्म एक पॉलिटिकल अवेकनिंग का टाइम है जिसमें हम मार्क्सिज्म या फेमिनिज्म जैसी मूवमेंट देखते। फिर मैंने कहा कि मॉडर्निज्म में theories have been revolved around central idea like idea of erotic love in psychology or psychoanalysis, idea of material and class conflict on the base of matter in Marxist theory, idea of gender and gender struggle, that is center for feminism, the idea of ethnicity that is seen in the studies of certain ethnicities, I mean Jewish literature or African American literature. Modernism was modern in many ways because it was a revolt against Victorian norms, standards, ideas, and literary and cultural forms. Modernism, in a way, that was the time of specialization. So like specialization in other branches of knowledge, literature and production of literature also became highly specialized activity. That specialized activity had a focus on highly intellectual poet that was idealized through the writings of T.S. Eliot, R.W.H. Auden, R.W.B. Yeats, or movements like imagism. In fiction, we saw the tradition of stream of consciousness novels. In postmodern age, that is continuity of modernism in many ways, theoretically, with one point that there is no center as was focused in the theory of psychoanalysis or theory of Marxism or theory of gender, I mean feminism. So postmodernism challenged all centralist approach, and it focused on what is called in linguistic the idea that is called post-structural, or idea that in structure there is no one-to-one correspondence between signifier and signified. यानी किसी सिग्निफायर और उसके सिग्निफाइड में, या किसी चीज को जाहिर करने वाले और उससे जाहिर होने वाले किसी लफ्ज या आवाज या सिस्टम या साइन में कोई एक और एक की मुताबिकत नहीं पाई जाती। कह लें कि मॉडर्निज्म में कोई हाई लिंग्विस्टिक इंटेलेक्चुअल एम था जिसे हमने स्पेशलाइजेशन के जरिए हासिल करना था, चाहे वो स्पेशलाइजेशन मेडिसिन में हो, साइकोलॉजी में हो, फिजिक्स में हो, लिटरेचर में हो, आर्ट्स में हो। पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म का बेसिक पॉइंट है कि देयर इज नो सच स्पेशलाइजेशन। स्पेशलाइजेशन इज रिप्लेस्ड विद द वर्ड इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी अप्रोच। यानी अगर मॉडर्निज्म में स्पेशलाइजेशन फोकस था तो पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म में इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी अप्रोच फोकस है। मॉडर्निज्म में सेंटर फोकस था तो पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म में सेंटरलेस या थिंक बियॉन्ड द सिस्टम जो है वो फोकस है। मॉडर्निज्म में हाईली इंटेलेक्चुअल पोइट्री, हाईली इंटेलेक्चुअल नॉवेल्स को फोकस किया गया था, लेकिन इसके बजाय पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म में चूंकि प्लूरैलिटी फोकस है तो उस प्लूरैलिटी की वजह से तमाम डाइवर्स फॉर्म्स ऑफ लिटरेचर को लेजिटिमेट फॉर्म्स ऑफ लिटरेचर समझा गया। उसके कई इम्पैक्ट हुए। पहला तो ये है कि जैसे मॉडर्निस्ट ये समझते थे कि पोइट को इंटेलेक्चुअल होना चाहिए, तो अब ये कहा कि इंटेलेक्चुअल होना भी चाहिए और नहीं भी होना चाहिए। यानी जो पोइट इंटेलेक्चुअल ट्रेडिशंस को ऑन करना चाहे वो कर सकते हैं, और वो इंटेलेक्चुअलिज्म भी उनका अपना अपना होगा। जैसे शेमस इनी का इंटेलेक्चुअलिज्म जो है वो टेड ह्यूज से डिफरेंट होगा, और अगर कोई पोइट फिलिप लार्किन की तरह सिरे से इंटेलेक्चुअल ट्रेडिशन को अपनी पोइट्री को अलूजन से बिल्कुल फ्री रख के एक लिरिकल आयरोनिकल पोइट्री करना चाहे तो वो भी उतनी ही रिलायबल हो। तो ये तीन पोस्ट मॉडर्न एज के लीडिंग पोइट है जिससे आप वाकिफ हैं, फिलिप लार्किन, टेड ह्यूज एंड शेमस इनी। और हम देखते हैं कि एक जो टेड ह्यूज है वो अपने इंटेलेक्चुअलिज्म की बेस एंथ्रोपोलॉजिकल स्टडीज पे रखता है, एनिमल स्टडीज पे रखता है, मिस्टिसिज्म पे रखता है। दूसरा इंटेलेक्चुअल पॉइंट शेमसीनी अपनी इंटेलेक्चुअलिज्म की बेस आयरिश कल्चर और मिथ के साथ साथ जो आयरलैंड का रूरल ईडियम है जो इसको ही एक्सप्लोर्स थ्रू डिगिंग, उसके ऊपर रखता है। अगर टेड ह्यूज मैनिकियन सिविलाइजेशन को इंपॉर्टेंस देता है तो शिवसेनी इसके बजाय जो पेजेंट या फार्मर्स हैं उनकी इमेजरी को यूज करता है टू डिस्क्राइब द ह्यूमन कंडीशन ऑफ कंटेम्परेरी पीपल, कंटेम्परेरी ह्यूमन बीइंग। बट फिलिप लार्किन दोनों से डिफरेंट ये समझता है कि ये पोइट का काम नहीं है कि वो अलूजन्स के जरिए जो है वो बात करे। He thinks that poet should sing like lyrical poet, and he can have trust in the use of or creative use of words which can be ironical, or it can act like any other artistic expression rather than allusion. Obscurity is challenged in this type of poetry. In novel we say there is no more centralist approach of a stream of consciousness novels, though there is continuity of symbolist novels of we can say first George Orwell and later on William Golding. There are many other experiments in forms of novels. Universally, that's the age of magical realist novels. But in the world of English, It echoes novels from different parts of the world which are written in English language. Most important are South African novels, where Afrikaners mean the white people of South Africa. Afrikaners present a certain predicament of human uh, fate or human life that is seen in the novel of Nadine Gordimer and G.M. Coetzee. ये दोनों नॉवलिस्ट जो हैं वो नोबेल प्राइज लॉरिएट हैं एंड दे आर बोथ अफ्रीकनर्स एज वेल. अमेरिकन लिटरेचर जिसको हमने मॉडर्न एज में भी अभी तक डिस्कस नहीं किया, बट दैट आल्सो रीचेस टू न्यू हाइट्स. वहां बहुत सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट हुए, जैसे जैज जनरेशन नॉवल, बीट जनरेशन नॉवेल्स, अर्नेस्ट हेमिंगवे's लॉस्ट जनरेशन नॉवेल्स, विलियम फॉकनर्स द नॉवेल्स ऑफ द अमेरिकन साउथ, feminist novels, and literature of Harlem Renaissance, that's the Renaissance of the Black, and fiction of Harlem Renaissance, including the worldly appreciated, I mean, Toni Morrison's fiction. In Canada, a literature that is called garrison literature and beyond, one aspect of literature that appears with newly discovered Canadian consciousness novels. That is seen in the works of many writers, including the leading novelist Margaret Atwood. Another idea of wilderness that appears in Canadian fiction. In all the regions which were once colonized, there emerged post-colonial literature and, most importantly, post-colonial novels. Post-colonial novels of Caribbean region, post-colonial novels of India, post-colonial novels of South Asia, post-colonial novels of Africa, post-colonial novels of Australia and Canada. Diasporic writers, not only Jewish diaspora, but global diaspora, they express themselves in English novel. So that is the plurality of postmodern literature, that is the plurality of postmodern fiction, where single genre or single style is not emphasized at all. There is a political novel in bulk. Political novels, I mean feminist novels, Marxist novels, post-colonial novels, environmentalist novels, in anti-war novels, Jewish novels, and gays and lesbians fiction. Eclectic mean different narratives go side by side. Eclectic literature is tradition of postmodern literature. यानी इस एज में eclectic आपस में फ्यूज होने की बजाय, आपस में मर्ज होने की बजाय, different voices exist themselves, and that affect genres. Plurality is seen in the single text as well as overall genre of postmodern literature, whether it's highly popular, I mean novel, or it drama or poetry. Another important aspect is that's the literature when British Empire has lost its status as an empire. वो empire जो मॉडर्न एज की बिगिनिंग पे कमजोर होना शुरू हुई थी और जो सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के एंड पे अपने आप को समेट कर दुनिया से वापस अपनी हद में यानी ब्रिटेन में जाके सिमट गई. वो ब्रिटिश एम्पायर जिसका दुनिया में वो रोल नहीं रहा जो पहले मॉडर्न एज में था। ये इंग्लिश लिटरेचर के लिहाज से बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है कि ब्रिटिश एम्पायर लॉस्ट इट्स ग्रेंजर एंड ब्रिटिश एम्पायर was reduced to its or confined to its boundaries of nation, boundary of, you can say, Britain. It was no more empire for Indian subcontinent. It was no more empire for certain countries of Africa. It was no more an empire for Australia, Canada, or America. Though in Canada and America, symbolically, the queen was given a certain regard, but it was not more than ceremonial regard. But America emerged, United States of America emerged as successor of the British Empire. And the cultural pride of British Empire that was transferred to America, that led the world in post-World War times by taking the leading role in establishment of UNO, taking the leading role in space discovery and space mission, including landing on the moon, taking the leading role in saving the world from two great depressions of the world. I mean 1930s का मुआशी बुहरान and 1960s का इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस. दोनों में जिस कंट्री ने दुनिया को बचाया उसका नाम यूएसए. Instead of wars like First World War or Second World War that were extremely horrible, another form of war was preferred that is called Cold War. And Cold War that was between USA and USSR. America successfully won this war and defeated USSR. USSR was shattered in 1989 when Berlin Wall fell down. After the fall of Berlin Wall, after the fall of Berlin Wall and emergence of USA as a sole superpower in the world, America introduced a new world order. And that new world order had no country as its challenger. Koi qawm, including China and Russia, was not challenging it. But there were non-state actors like Al-Qaeda, like Daesh, that tried to challenge it, and they have been targeted by USA in its own way. That's the time which we are discussing. So first thing that gets our attention, that's the end of Second World War. The world had moved into atomic age with the dropping of bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. You know that these two cities, they were the target of atom bombs, and that caused mass destruction in Japan and two cities of Japan. Bombs were dropped by America, but you can say the so-called justification of dropping the bomb was to end the war. Otherwise, it was very difficult to conclude Second World War. तो इस जंग को खत्म करने का एक तरीका ये निकाला गया कि जो नहीं मानता उसमें बम गिरा के जंग खत्म करो. The world was threatened with these bombs. It meant world might end at any moment. And for that reason, you can say the other ideas were presented. There was a term Iron Curtain that divided the world politically into communist and non-communist world. चूंकि मॉडर्न एज का एक इंपॉर्टेंट इवेंट बॉल्शविक रेवोल्यूशन है, रशियन रेवोल्यूशन है, एंड that was success story of communist revolution in Russia, and Russia tried to import revolution to the rest of the world. America resisted it, and then we see in post World War time a curtain, iron curtain that divides communist Russia, communist world and non-communist world. Second World War accelerated the breakup of the British Empire and forced upon Great Britain a reassessment of its place in the world. ये मैंने अभी शुरू में भी कहा कि बर्तानिया अपनी हदों में वापस आ गया. The wartime British Prime Minister, famous character Winston Churchill, devoted much of his time to writing a 6-volume history of the Second World War, a history of English-speaking people, and he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1953. So he was a politician, he was a statesman, and his intellectual caliber is that. The years since the end of Second World War have been a decline in British influence and continuing failure to compete successfully with the newly developing economies of the world. But there was voice of England through media, and that was through its most important radio and later on TV programs, which are called BBC. In social terms, long period of austerity led to boom years of 1960, when the post-war youth culture began to find expression and new influence and optimism filled Britain. यानी ब्रिटेन के अपने अंदर एक तरह की खुशहाली जो है वो पोस्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर टाइम में देखी गई, बिकॉज on one side Britain was liberated from the responsibilities of British Empire. On one side it was gaining from the target land, and it was also investing in the target or colonized land which were liberated. There was a culture of popular literature which began in 20th century, and it reached to new peak, and it was welcomed by postmodernist theory as well, that said surface is as important as depth. पास्ट का सारा लिटरेचर डेप्थ पे फोकस करता था, लेकिन पोस्ट मॉडर्न एज में आके सरफेस पर भी फोकस किया गया. There was a wonderful mix of realism, romance, fable, satire, parody, play with form, and philosophical intelligence in post-World War British novel, British literature. The mix of post-Darwin and postmodern is indicative of the binary linking of traditional and new elements in literature. The subject matter is still essentially the human condition. I mean, the subject matter of pre-World War and post-World War that share focus on human condition. There are no more heroes as there might have been in the time of Beowulf, classic epic of Anglo-Saxon period or medieval literature. No, there is the world in which heroes are useless. Identity is the common theme. Sexual identity, you can say in gender studies, feminist literature, local identity, that is in post-colonial literature, national identity, again in diaspora and post-colonial literature, racial identity, that is in ethnic and post-colonial literature, like in South American literature, spiritual identity. Spiritual identity, that's the identity of the Muslims, identity of the Jews, intellectual identity. In there were many intellectual movements, including, you can say, Marxist or different cultural theories, the phenomenologist, psychoanalyst. That type of intellectual identity were also focused. If we begin with drama, as we discussed in modern drama, that modern drama was continental in nature. Continental means it was less British and more European. It was expression of different movements of drama like realism, naturalism, symbolism, expressionism, and it had certain British attributes like drawing room comedies of George Bernard Shaw or Noel Coward. In post-World War drama, we see the continuity of continental tradition through highly influencing tradition that is called theater of the absurd. Even theater of the absurd is more important than all other traditions of drama, including naturalist and epic theater. अगर हम ये कहें कि पूरी थिएटर की ट्रेडिशन में सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट थिएटर की ट्रेडिशन जो है वो कौन सी है, तो मैसेज के लिए चाहे ना हो, लेकिन इंटेलेक्चुअल वर्ल्ड के लिए थिएटर ऑफ द एब्सर्ड सबसे पहले आएगा. फिर जो है वो पॉलिटिकल सिग्निफिकेंस की वजह से एपिक थिएटर को हम बात करेंगे, और थर्ड पे शायद हम जो है नेचुरलिस्ट थिएटर की बात करेंगे. थिएटर ऑफ द एब्सर्ड के साथ पैरेलल इंग्लैंड के अंदर जो उनका अपना ट्रेडिशन था ड्राइंग रूम कॉमेडीज का, दैट वाज चैलेंज थ्रू a drama of protest that is seen through John Osborne drama Look Back in Anger, that was performed in 1956, and in history of theatre 1956 is thought the very important year. In British there emerged kitchen sink drama, particularly kitchen sink drama of Arnold Wesker and John Osborne. In Theatre of the Absurd, we saw Samuel Beckett, later on Harold Pinter, and in other parts of Europe, Arthur Adamov, Eugene Ionesco, and Jean Genet. The theatre was dominated until the 1950 by well-made plays in standard English for middle-class audience. Well-made plays that have the proper plots. And that was a tradition of the dramatists like Scribe but it was uh, made perfect by the great master of plot of drama, I mean Henrik Ibsen. तो इब्सन के ड्रामा में चूंकि वेल मेड प्लेस अपनी वंडरफुल फॉर्म तक पहुंच गए थे, तो बाकी जगहों पर उनको कॉपी किया जाता रहा, उसको फॉलो किया गया, एंड द मिडिल क्लास ऑडियंस वर इम्प्रेस्ड बाय दैट taste which actually Ibsen developed for the people. Few problem areas were touched on. Although both Noel Coward and George Bernard Shaw had found ways of making serious moral points, but that were the comedies which were amusing the masses in Britain. The language of drama in 20th century has undergone significant changes. From Oscar Wilde in 1890s to Noel Coward in from 1920s to 1940s, it was consistently elevated and stylish. Bernard Shaw, D.H. Lawrence, J.M. Sen, Sean O'Casey brought in dialect and lower class accents. In Shaw's drama Pygmalion, we see Cockney accent was brought on stage. Irish dramatist Saint Sean O'Casey, they used to represent dialect of lower classes of Ireland. The plays of Samuel Beckett, John Osborne, Harold Pinter, or Orton in 50s and 60s are more colloquial and slangy. That is the development कि आम बोलचाल की जबान colloquial, जिसमें बहुत खासतौर पे जो शहरी जबान है उसमें स्लैंग्स होते हैं. तो colloquial and slangy language was used by dramatists of kitchen sink tradition and dramatists of theatre of the absurd. In keeping with the setting and characters like tramps, gangster, newspaper vendor, unemployed youth, you can say newspaper vendors and unemployed youths are major focus of the drama of the protest or kitchen sink drama, and tramps are shown in Beckett's theatre of the absurd. Language is more naturalistic and shows gaps, repetition, silence, incoherence that is modeled on normal conversation. Another dramatist of the time is Terence Rattigan, who wrote French Without Tears, or the Browning version, and The Windows Boy. As I mentioned that British theatre has the most important year of 1956 when John Osborne drama Look Back in Anger was performed, where protagonist James Porter, whose nickname is Jimmy Porter, appears as angry young man. And that angry young man becomes a prototype for a certain type of mood of human being in this world. John Osborne Look Back in Anger was staged at Royal Court Theatre in 1956. Look Back in Anger was seen as a testament of new generation, that's the angry generation, that heralds a new spirit in drama, mean where ideas will not only be discussed, rather more sordid, bitter reality will be presented. John Osborne also wrote Luther and A Patriot for Me. Look Back in Anger shows Jimmy's failure to change the social status of his own class and those whom he wants to change through education and training. That also shows the impact of that bitterness in his personal life, mean bitterness with his friend Cliff and his wife Alison. Osborne and Arnold Wesker, who wrote a trilogy that is called The Kitchen, and that is the standard of kitchen sink drama. Kitchen sink drama presents the sordid and bitter reality of life, presents lower class domestic realism against the conventions of drawing room comedies that was dominating the stage since the time of Somerset Maugham, who was very popular dramatist of the time, like Noel Coward. So Arnold Wesker trilogy, The Kitchen, is the standard form of kitchen sink drama. John Osborne, Look Back in Anger, has elements of kitchen sink drama, and it is prototype for the protest play or the drama of the angry young man. A different kind of realism is found in the plays of Beckett and Pinter. Their works were for several years missing